Hello everyone, it's your host Udhay and back again with another episode of Unveiled. So today we have a very different and an interesting kind of episode. It's going to be in a discussion format basically. And I have with me here two wonderfully talented individuals with an astute sense of dignity and has that particular quality by which they can mesmerize their audience with their powerful speaking. I invite Ms. Devika and Tamanna to our show. Welcome to Unveiled with Udhay.
Thank you, Udhay, for inviting to your show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
That's great. Even the most common point between us is that we study together for law entrance and we are good friends also. You might see that connection later on. Okay, so basically what we are going to talk about in this episode is the infamous case of that has been discussed for over the past century and was proposed by BJP in the Indian Constitution, and it is basically been explicitly mentioned in the Article 44 of the Indian Constitution, that is the Uniform Civil Code. So what exactly is this proposed Uniform Civil Code? So Uniform Civil Code is a proposal in India to formulate and implement secular personal laws of citizens which apply on all citizens equally regardless of their religion. So it is basically a formulation of a law that is going to unify all personal laws and all criminal laws, etc. So currently, the personal laws of various communities are governed by their religious scriptures. Implementation of a universal civil code, uniform civil code across the nation is one of the contentious promises pursued by India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP. So I think it's best if we start this discussing about this from the roots of this concept of uniform civil law. So Devika, let's start with you. Give us a brief blast from the past about Uniform Civil Code.
Actually, the origin of the UCC was back to the colonial India when the British government submitted its report in 1835. So stressing the need of uniformity in the codification of Indian law, like there are so many crimes, evidence and contracts recommending the personal laws in Hindus, Muslims and several other religions. So based on these recommendations, there was a bill that is adopted in 1956 as the Hindu Secession Act that meant to codify the law relating to the interstate or unwilled secession among Hindus, Buddhists, Jains and Sikhs and several other religions. So in order to bring a uniformity among different religious groups, the court have often said the judgments that the government should move towards the Uniform Civil Code.
Yeah, that's true. And back then, the British insisted that personal laws of Hindu and Muslim should be kept outside of codification, which then leads us to our next question and a landmark in the context of UCC, that is Uniform Civil Code. The significant need for a uniform civil code, I think, was brought to the limelight in the 1985 Shahwani Case. So, Tamanna, what exactly do you think was the social situation back then, and what is the prominence of that case in the current plight for a uniform civil code?
Okay, so back in 1985, the situation was completely different from what we see today. And the Shahwani case was one of great relevance back then because it not only sparked a discussion about UCC back in those days, but it was also a certain landmark for Muslim women, as it was one of the first time when women were actually fighting for their rights, and that through Muslim women while filing a case, knowing what their rights were and knowing what they deserve. So basically what the Shahwani case is all about, it is about a 62-year-old Muslim woman, Shahwani, who filed a case in court stating that she required maintenance from her husband, and her husband refuted this case by stating that he only needed to pay her maintenance for a specific period after their divorce, which is about three lunar moons apparently. So afterwards, he was no longer liable to pay her any maintenance, is what he claimed. But after a long, drawn-out legal battle, the judgment was stated by the Supreme Court, saying that he needs to pay her a regular amount of maintenance as stated in the laws, because she is unable to look after herself or to work for herself, and she requires maintenance, not just for herself, but for her children as well. And so Supreme Court gave a verdict in her favor. So as I mentioned earlier, it was of great relevance back then, as it caused a lot of controversies amongst people. There were lots of discussions, debates. There were many who were against the decision, many who were for this decision. And it was during this time that the need for a UCC emerged actually, because based on Muslim personal laws, but her husband's status was correct. He only needed to pay her maintenance for a specific period of time. Afterwards, he was no longer liable for it. But based on the laws that were stated in our constitution, if she is unable to take care of herself, if she's unable to work for her livelihood, then she is liable for maintenance from her husband. So in a way, it was contradicting one another. And because of this, a sort of discussion emerged amongst the people or all over our country, saying that maybe a UCC or a Uniform Civil Code is necessary. If you could somehow unify all these various fragmented laws that are present and find one common solution for these issues, it would be of great help and relevance in such situations like this. So the Shahwani case was definitely of great relevance back then and even today, as we still continue our debate on UCC.
That is true. I mean, Shahwani case is one such interesting thing because it can also, in a way, talk about the discrimination of women in those days. And I think Uniform Civil Code is kind of like essential in overcoming and establishing women empowerment in our current era. And Supreme Court had said during those times that a common civil code would help the cause of national integration by removing the disparate loyalties to laws having conflicting ideologies in the case of Muslim laws. So now it's time to move on to our era, where Uniform Civil Code has almost become a hard to attain necessity, where as a world and especially our generation is moving forward with the global principles of equality, humanity, and modernity. I feel the importance of a uniform code has increased drastically. So what do you think is a uniform civil code? What do you think is the uniform civil code the way to go in the future for India? And do you feel that it is going to be a major developmental revolution in the coming decades?
It is always like a development because the need of uniform civil code has been felt for more than a century. That is, the country has already suffered a lot because of the absence of it. Like for the national integration, we wanted to unify the code for the imperative both for the minorities, especially the women and the religious minorities. For promoting the national unity and solidarity, and for the development, we require the UCC. And also, there is another thing like gender justice. So when there is a right in women, and there's a limitation in the patriarchal disclosure through the religious laws. So when UCC is usually liberating the women from the patriarchal domination and provide them with right to equality and liberty.
I mean, that's true. And I think it is a major developmental revolution because Uniform Civil Code, especially in coming decades, and considering the way our generation is going, is absolutely needed. But then there are a lot of negative sides to it. So while we're at it, might as well cover what would be the negative effects of the implementation of the Uniform Civil Code in the short term and the long term. And is now the right time to go for implementing this? Tamanna, what is your say on this?
Okay, like anything else in this world, even the UCC or Uniform Civil Code has a lot of pluses and minuses, like positive and negative aspects. So we cannot fully say that it is not right, nor can we fully say that it is absolutely right. So when we focus on negative aspects, one main negative aspect that everyone is arguing on, or that is the main fact that enforces this entire argument against UCC, is that it is said to be clashing with the right to freedom of religion, or Article 25 of the Constitution. Many people believe or they're stating that these separate personal laws are somehow or are a way in which people are practicing or in a way are getting the right to practice their own religion. And the creation of a UCC or a Uniform Civil Code which states equal laws for all, the same laws for all of different religions, castes and creeds, is some way in a way clashing with this right of theirs. And this is a main argument that is going on against UCC, and like I said, the main enforcing point of it as well. So like I said, this is the main negative part of it, and once again, not everyone will agree with it and not everyone will be against it as well. There are many who say that this argument is true and because of this we cannot implement it, but there are others who are saying that it is not completely accurate and it's not a major reason to not implement it as well. It depends on a person's perspective that whether this is a really negative aspect of implementation of UCC or not largely depends. And on whether it's the right time to implement it now, we can definitely say that it is a better time to implement it, because based on the previous years, like back in 1985 when the original argument arose, it's definitely better to implement it now than back then. But is it the best time? We cannot really say. Maybe the condition will be way more better in the future and it will be much more easier to implement it then. Or maybe it will grow worse and maybe it's better to implement it now. Those are certain uncertainties we can never see.
That's true. I mean, at a point we have to somehow start this, because we wait for the right time and there is actually no right time to implement it, because I think implementation of uniform civil code should be a evolutionary thing, and you can only do it like step by step. You can't just introduce it directly into the constitution and hope that everything is going to go right, because it is going to be a step to step thing, and I think that is the right way to go about it, isn't it, Devika? What do you say?
Yeah, it is, because as country with diversity, for India to uplift all the religion together and having a code is important. And it is somewhat, people say that it is having a code because for having India as a diversified country, we have to have all the people together so that a code can be made and make every people happy and without much conflicts. We require the country without conflicts. That is the basic thing.
And I think that is somewhat of an idealistic view, because no one is going to be happy. No one is going to be completely happy with this, because everyone has their own different opinions, and of course there is this thing where whatever is introduced will always be critically misunderstood by a section of people, and there is always going to be some misconceptions about such a sensitive and revolutionary topic. So Devika, what are some of the common misconceptions that you have heard regarding the Uniform Civil Code?
The main misconception is that the people say that they destroy the religious practice and they continue to compel and follow a particular region majorities. Yeah. So the minorities feel that the majority are compelling them to do a code which helps them to destroy their religious practices, and this conflict of freedom of religion with equality before law and right to equality. That is the main problem that people say that they don't want a UCC. And the other thing that we have having a misconception is that unawareness, that the people is regarding the objects of UCC. The reason is lack of education or because of fake news, that is, and irrational religious beliefs. That is the main misconception, I guess.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I have heard some wild theories regarding Uniform Civil Code. First of all, even I used to believe some of them. So even I am a victim of that, I could say. But then, one of the things I have heard that Uniform Civil Code completely takes off reservations. That is one thing I thought was right. But then, once I studied about it, I understood it completely. So now it's the part which is the most interesting one. What are your ideas and solutions to solve this protest against the implementation of Uniform Civil Code, if you think it is necessary? And what would be changed? What would be changed? What are the changes you would make to make it more better? Keeping in mind the interests of the people as in general. Any one of you can answer. Tamanna, you can start.
Okay, so actually a main thing that we all can do is actually the major misconceptions. It's correcting them. Like Devika said earlier, unawareness is the major issue over here. Just like Udhay, even I have heard a lot of wild theories about it and I was completely clueless, we could say. All I knew were all these different theories and everything that everyone else was saying about it. So as an individual, I did not have much of an idea what it was. But it was when I started my own research, when I studied more in depth about this, that I understood actually what UCC is. I was able to get a clear idea of what are the pros, cons, what is it all about, who is it affecting, what is it going to happen when it's implemented. And that definitely gives a much more clearer picture. So if people can be more aware about it, it won't solve all the issues that are prevailing around this, but at least a certain portion of, let's say, the population will have much more clearer idea. So they won't be misled through all these theories that are being, that are flying around, or it's a direct source of information that they're getting, first-hand information. It's not being told by someone else to them. So always they can trust that particular type of information. They can they can make a decision based on the information that they get like that. So it will help them come to a stand on whether they're against UCC, whether they're for UCC, what UCC is all about, and exactly what their stand should be in this. So definitely spreading awareness is the major thing we can do. And I'm pretty sure that will solve a lot of issues as well, because throughout this discussion, it's been pretty evident that these misconceptions are causing a lot of issues as well regarding this.
I do agree with Tamanna, and I'm adding one more point, is that we can have, Goa as a shining example to UCC, because due to the features it contains, that Goa's UCC has that compulsory marriage registration and prohibition of polygamy or bigamy, uniform age in marriage in men and women, and consent of men and women in performing a marriage. And these are some of the, taking Goa as an example, we can have a ground of implementing UCC at the national level too.
That is true. I mean, Goa is a shining example because they follow this uniform civil code. It is also, I think, known as Goa family law or something. I'm not sure about that.
And Goa family.
Yeah. So that is there. And I think Goa is one of the best examples India can take and look forward to implement in all the states. And raising awareness is one such important and a very essential feature that must be done, because a lot of people are not aware, even those who live in the city. I'm not just talking about the rural people. I'm talking about the people living in the cities also, because even though all these social media, everything is existing, people usually prefer to watch mass media entertainment, including me, all the entertainment stuff. And I think they overlook the many small details regarding such a revolutionary thing, which is going to affect them in the future. And many of them overlook that aspect of it, and I think that is one area where the government has to take measures to make an effort to actually raise awareness in the minds of the people. And they have to adopt modern steps like social media awareness campaigns, and even more modern as the world changes and the technology grows, they have to grow along with it, because at the present condition, the government is staying back, I think, like 2 years from what is currently and technologically acceptable. And it is shown in the overall development of India too. Even though India is such a big country with a lot of population, we are dragged back by a lot of technological, failures, and that is why I think we lag back in many areas, whether it's sports, we lag back in Olympics, we lag back in developmental areas and everything related. So I think Uniform Civil Code is one such thing that has to be implemented in a very evolutionary process, and that is the best way to go about it. So that's it from today's episode. I had a wonderful time chatting with both of you and listening to your ideas and solutions. How did you like it?
Okay, honestly saying, this was an amazing experience for us as well. Like, we got to share our points and we all learned something about UCC. Like, we all had our specific set of information and all we knew about it and our ideas and theories based on it. So sharing it definitely, like I said, gives us a clearer idea, a clearer viewpoint, and definitely sharing information is good. It spreads awareness and it's definitely something that we all need to do. And people our age, we are a bit restricted in that area, but then getting a chance to do it is definitely wonderful.
Yeah, same for me, because, speaking on my views regarding a certain topic, and especially Udhay told me about this topic and I was confused. Like, I also thought the same thing as Udhay, that it is for the reservation of people and all. And my misconception was removed when I researched on this topic, and it led me a great difference, yeah.
See, that is the best example. And people of our age are mostly overlooked, actually. And I've had this experience many times. I'm sure you have had that too, because we are in a stage where, we are considered as kids and adults, basically. So sometimes our opinions are overlooked, and Unveil is totally about that. It is giving a platform for our generation to come forward and express themselves. So that has been my ideology from the start to start this podcast, and I think basically it's going in a good direction because I have such wonderful guests like you. And so everyone who's watching this video, if you liked it, if you enjoyed it, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and I think you might be familiar with Tamanna. I forgot to mention that earlier. We have done an episode regarding dissecting the judiciary system. It will be available in Spotify, Apple Tunes, etc. So go check that out if you haven't seen it. And that's it. So it's your host Udhay signing off. Bye bye.